combined trends of increased inequality and decreasing mobility pose a fundamental threat to the American dream, our way of life, and what we stand for around the globe.
The growing disparity in jobs and wages is a major contributor to the widening wealth gap in the United States. While the economy has experienced significant growth in recent decades, much of this prosperity has been concentrated among high-income earners, leaving low- and middle-income workers behind. Stagnant wages coupled with rising costs of living have made it increasingly difficult for many Americans to achieve financial stability. The ongoing gender and racial pay disparities and technological advancements that eliminate middle-skilled jobs further exacerbate this divide. These factors contribute to a cycle of inequality, where wealth accumulates at the top while millions struggle to make ends meet. Addressing these systemic issues is essential to closing the wealth gap and ensuring equitable opportunities for all Americans.
While researching, we have found multiple topics that contribute to America's large divide in jobs and wages. While making the executive decision having immigration, gender, and race as our main focus to the inequality, we believe that understanding more about this topic itself and its contributions will better help also understand why we chose our principal focus. The other factors to the inequality of America's job and wages include right-to-work laws, subminimum wages, tariffs, and international trade. Let's briefly dive into these topics and their contributions to the larger scales of jobs and wages.
Starting off with tariffs, tariffs was a topic in the beginning of our research that fell under jobs and wages, but didn't make a big impact in the wealth gap.
Tariffs are taxes imposed by one country on goods imported from another country.
Continuing with international trade. International trade was a topic that was coming up frequent in our research, but didn't make a big impact when it came to the wealth gap in the United States.
International trade is an exchange involving a good or service conducted between at least two different countries. The exchanges can be imports or exports. An import refers to a good or service brought in a domestic country, and export refers to a good or service sold to a foreign country.
Right-to-work laws currently enacted in 26 states in the United States give workers the freedom to choose whether or not to join a labor union in their workplace. These laws prohibit contracts that require workers to join a union or pay union dues as a condition of employment. Some argue that these laws support business investments and long-term economic growth, with some studies showing increased employment and manufacturing in right-to-work states. However, critics view these regulations as an eroded collective bargaining and contend that these laws weaken unions, leading to lower wages for workers. Research indicates that while right-to-work laws are associated with higher employment rates and increased manufacturing share, they also correlate with a decline in annual wages and union membership rates. For instance, the American Bar Association claimed 27% of U.S. workers were union members in 1979, but by 2018, 12% of the workforce was ununionized. The debate surrounding right-to-work laws continues to be a contentious issue in labor relations and economic policy discussions across the United States.
Now, let's dive into immigration. Immigrants often take on essential roles in industries such as agriculture, healthcare, and construction, creating opportunities for broader economic stability and potential narrowing the wealth gap. Addressing major issues and embracing the economic contributions of immigrants is essential to closing the wealth gap and ensuring equal opportunities for all Americans. Since late 2020, over 9 million individuals have migrated to the U.S., propelling population growth to nearly 1.2% annually, the highest since the 1990s. This influx has been very important in meeting labor demands across various sectors. Immigrants contribute to many important workforce in critical industries like agriculture, with over 25% of workers being immigrants, construction, where immigrants represent 1 in 4 workers, STEM fields, having approximately 23.1% of STEM workers being immigrants. Healthcare, where immigrants account for 15.6% of nurses and 27.7% of health aides. Immigrants are contributing significantly to the economic expansion by filling essential roles, fostering innovation, and enhancing productivity. Recent policy shifts aimed at reducing immigration could tighten the labor market, potentially leading to labor shortages in sectors heavily reliant on these immigrant workers. More specifically, data found from the article Imported Inequality by Ping Yu found that low-skill immigrants contribute more to rising income inequality compared to high-skill immigrants, who may even reduce inequality to certain income segments. From AP News article, more information finds that immigrant workers have significantly boosted the U.S. labor force, filling millions of job vacancies and preventing a recession by supporting economic growth and reducing labor shortages. Immigrants have expanded the workforce, enabling the U.S. economy to sustain job growth without overheating inflation, which had been a challenge in the past. So since 2000, immigration flows have shifted towards highly educated individuals with a decrease in immigrants lacking high school diplomas. This shift has implications for complementary and wage effects. Immigrants and natives within similar scale groups are not perfect substitutes, rather they are complementary. Immigration remains a continuous political issue with differing views on its economic benefits versus potential drawbacks, such as downward pressure on wages and the strain on local resources. So with this given information you now know, we must have to ask ourselves what would happen if immigration was completely taken away. The construction industry, reliant on immigrant labor, accounting for over 25% of its workforce, would face severe labor shortages, increasing building costs and delaying projects. In agriculture, where immigrants contribute nearly half the labor force, labor shortages could result in lower crop yields and higher food prices without immigrants. The GDP growth could slow by an estimated 1.5% annually due to a reduced labor force and innovation deficit. Recently found plans include wanting to deport up to 1 million individuals annually and wanting to re-implement policies like Remain in Mexico that require asylum seekers to wait outside the U.S. while their claims are processed. Critics argue that mass deportations and detention practices could lead to human rights violations and significant societal disruptions. These proposed policies represent a substantial shift in the U.S. immigration system, emphasizing strict reinforcement and significant reductions in both legal and illegal immigration. Policy reforms, including implementing comprehensive immigration reforms that grant immigrants full rights as enhance economic growth and ensure fair labor practices. Encouraging immigration in sectors facing labor shortages can help meet workforce demands, support economic stability, and prevent wage suppression. Strategic immigration policies can ensure that industries reliant on immigration labor continue to thrive. In summary, immigration plays a multi-faced role in shaping the U.S. labor market with both positive contributions as well as challenges. Thoughtful policy reforms and strategic planning are essential to harness the benefits of immigration to the U.S. jobs and wages. Now that we understand the importance of immigration and the effects if taken away, we can now narrow our research into focusing more on a current negative effect of America's jobs and wages. Here we are transitioning into gender, race, inequality and how it's contributing to America's jobs and wages inequality.
World declared, human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights.
Dating back to the early 20th century, history of gender and racial inequality in jobs and wages significantly contributes to the widening wealth gap in the United States. Women earn 82 cents per dollar a man makes, and particularly women of color consistently earn less than their male counterparts for the same work done, with the gender wage gap remaining stubbornly wide. For example, black women earn about 64 cents and a Latina woman earn about 56 cents for every dollar earned by a white man, according to recent studies. This disparity is exacerbated by systemic barriers that limit easy access to high-paying jobs, such as discrimination in hiring, promotion, and pay decisions. Additionally, racial minorities are often concentrated in lower-paying industries and occupations, such as service or manual labor, which offer limited opportunities for upward mobility. While the income gap in women is lesser compared to that of a man, a woman's wealth gap is significantly larger as they accumulate less wealth over their lifetime, affecting savings and financial security. Families relying on women as primary earners face financial disadvantages, as explained in the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, such as smaller financial cushions and as evident as 55 cents difference in median wealth. A study done by the University of Chicago demonstrates a woman's flexibility decreases with childcare as their hours shorten to 49 hours worked compared to 57 for men. Furthermore, their childcare promotes the factor of holding back women's earnings at an executive level because of the accused lesser qualifications for managerial positions. In regards to the U.S. economy, it loses trillions in potential growth due to the underutilization of women's earning power. If women were paid equally, not only would they recover from the $1.6 trillion lost to the wage gap stated by USA Today, but it's estimated that the U.S. economy could grow in its GDP by about $12 trillion.
The wealth gap in the United States is further worsened by systematic challenges like the glass ceiling, which researchers define as a prevention of women from advancing to top-level management positions despite being equally or more qualified than their male counterparts. This absence of women in leadership not only stifles individual career growth, but also impacts the broader workforce, as a lack of representation in upper management discourages women in non-manager roles. Although more women earn college degrees than men, societal expectations and structural barriers often steer them towards fields that pay less, with a 2010 research done by BFI claiming women earn 50% less than male counterparts 10 years after graduation. Additionally, their pay decrease is seen through sub-minimum wages, which are legally permitted wages that are set below the standard minimum wage, allowing certain categories of workers to be paid less than the federally or state-mandated minimum wage. Now, diving into worker mobility, or the ability to change jobs freely, is another area where inequality manifests. While in theory, workers are free to leave jobs for better opportunities, many women and minorities are constrained by systematic challenges such as limited access to unemployment benefits, exploitative workforce practices, and overtime regulations without fair compensation. With this unequal power, organizations such as the American Bar Association noticed the economic-wide productivity increase by 59.7%, while the compensation only grew by 13.7%. These barriers disproportionately affect low-income workers, many of whom are women of color, making it difficult to escape cycles of poverty. Furthermore, the lack of worker mobility underscores the broader issue of unequal pay and opportunity, as many women face systematic biases, surveying 61% claiming workplace discrimination, that hinder their ability to secure equal pay for equal work. Solutions to narrowing the wealth gap through jobs and wages is by focusing on alterations of the economic system, like raising the minimum wage could help women earn higher wages and ultimately reach the goal of equal pay, as well as challenging traditional gender roles and achieving shared prosperity. There could be non-market solutions like paid leave for reasons like maternity, which encourage shared responsibilities at home, such as incentivizing fathers' involvement in caregiving. Stronger enforcement of equal pay laws and elimination of practices like some minimum wages ensures women receive the same compensation as men for performing the same job. This strong enforcement leads to a strengthening of labor standards that provide fair scheduling, easy accessibility for worker mobility, and increased access to employer-provided benefits. Eliminating restrictions and implementing paths to equality is a powerful step toward reducing the wealth gap in the United States, particularly for women and marginalized communities disproportionately affected by these lower pay structures.
Addressing the wage gap through measures such as raising the minimum wage, implementing paid family leave, enforcing equal pay laws, and eliminating some minimum wages could significantly reduce income inequality in the United States, particularly for women in marginalized communities. Raising the federal minimum wage to $15 to $17 could increase annual earnings for women by $70 billion and lift nearly 900,000 people out of poverty within 1 to 3 years. Paid family leave, which encourages shared caregiving responsibilities, could reduce the motherhood wage penalty, with studies showing a 7% wage increase for women in states with such policies over a decade. Enforcing pay laws could close the gender gap up to 50%, resulting in $512 billion in additional wages for women annually, with measurable progress within 2 to 5 years. Eliminating minimum wages, particularly in tipped industries where women make up to 70% of the workforce, could add an average of $5,000 annually to their earnings and provide immediate benefits within 1 to 3 years. While short-term progress could be seen in a few years, achieving full wage parity and dismantling systematic biases may take 20 to 30 years, with these policies laying the foundation for sustained economic equity. In conclusion, there are many paths to take with jobs and wages to help narrow the wealth gap. These are just a few focuses and problems to solve. This is only the beginning and a small part of the solution to making the wealth gap even in the United States.